What would you like President Ramaphosa to do about the situation that we've just seen on the screen?
I don't know. Look, these are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death, 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 horrible death. Death, I don't know. To pick anyone, white South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws, and this is all.
We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can
take land. And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is
nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now been utilized.
The farmers are not black.
I
don't say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. And the people that are being killed in large numbers, and you saw all those grave sites, and those are people that loved ones going, I guess on a Sunday morning, they told me, to pay respect to their loved ones that were killed. Their heads chopped off. They died violently. And, you know, I mean, we're here to talk about it, and I didn't know we'd get involved here.
We've been tracking some high tensions at the White House as President Trump meets with his South African counterpart, President Cyril Ramaphosa. The face-to-face is happening just days after a group of white South Africans were granted refugee status in the United States, a highly controversial move.
That's right. And just moments ago, President Trump repeated an unverified claim that they have been subject to genocide, which South Africa vehemently denies. Let's get right to CNN's Kristen Holmes, who is at the White House. And Kristen, I know that you've been listening to this play out. Walk us through what happened.
Yeah, this is growing increasingly more and more tense. We saw that the South African president came here with a real charm offensive. He was complimenting Donald Trump, saying that he wanted to reset relations, but things have really taken a turn. Now, all of this is about what you just brought up, which is this claim from President Trump that there is white genocide in South Africa. It is about the fact that there are white Afrikaners that Trump says are being pushed out of their land and being killed, something that the South African government denies. Now, Donald Trump was asked by a reporter in the room, what would it take for you to change your opinion on this, for you to see things differently? And the president of South Africa interrupted him, saying, I'll take that one. I think what's going to help Donald Trump is talking to the delegation that I brought with me, that they will tell him that there is no white genocide in South Africa at this time. Part of the delegation there includes two world famous golfers, people who apparently, according to the South African president, Donald Trump asked to come along. Then, in what appears to be somewhat of an ambush, because they were clearly prepared for it, the White House, Donald Trump asks them to dim the lights, and they play a video, which they say is a documentary or news clips that show that there is white genocide. Now, just moments ago, when you guys came on the air, there was an official from South Africa trying to explain what was being seen in that video, saying that these are members of an opposition party, that this is not the government that is calling for the death of white farmers or for the death of white Afrikaners in South Africa. But this is clearly growing more and more tense. And I can tell you, I mean, this was a man, the president of South Africa, who came prepared to court Donald Trump, but I don't think he came prepared for this. He knew exactly what to say in terms of trying to ingratiate himself with the president. He talked about how they brought him a book of all of his big golf courses, how he's been taking lessons on golfing because Donald Trump told him to, that he brought these two world famous golfers with him, saying that he thank you for what you did during COVID, all of the right things. And then we saw this situation start to escalate. Now, remember, this was being billed as a trade meeting, but we knew that this topic was going to come up. This is, as you said, just right after a group of 50 refugees, white South African farmers, were brought into the U.S., granted that refugee status. And Donald Trump continues to say that we have thousands of people telling us that they are fleeing South Africa because of what he says is genocide. The White House was very prepared for this line of attack. It's not just the videos. I've been watching on social media as the rapid response team has been putting out article after article after article as this is going. Donald Trump was holding articles that he had printed out to show headlines that he said purported white genocide. Again, the government is saying there is no white genocide. There is overall, and there is no evidence of that we have either. This is an unsubstantiated claim. This all stems from this idea that the land is being seized away from white farmers, and that is why they have been granted refugee status to come into the country because they fear being killed as well. There was a question about that. Donald Trump kind of brushed that off as well, saying that anyone facing persecution could come to the U.S. and that they had welcomed everyone. But this is growing increasingly heated and increasingly tense after starting off with seemingly pleasantries. And this is not the first time we've seen this happening in these bilateral meetings in the Oval Office, where they start off, again, two people trying to have a discussion in front of the cameras, and then it has completely devolved into fighting. And again, you're now seeing other members of the delegation stepping in, saying that they want to clarify what's in the video. You have Donald Trump doubling down, tripling down on this idea. And it's still, as far as I can tell, I'm looking here, I think it is still going on right now. And this has been, I mean, it's been roughly 45 minutes of this, but probably the most surprising and certainly not normal part of these kind of interaction was the bringing in of this video and playing it for the South African president to say almost a gotcha moment of here's the evidence against you.
Yeah, and apparently the president describing what was in the video, a series of white crosses, as having been grave sites, that was refuted by some of the African delegation in the room, suggesting that this was more of a political demonstration, as you outlined. Kristen Holmes from the White House will let you keep monitoring that event for us. Let's bring in CNN's Larry Madowo. Larry, you've obviously been covering South Africa for some time. Can you give us context to that video that the president played in the Oval Office? I understand that this was a political demonstration, not actual grave sites.
That was a lot to take in. Almost everything President Donald Trump said was inaccurate or immediately debunked. And showing these videos that are historical in nature and without context did make President Ramaphosa uncomfortable. He actually struggled to watch them. We have looked into the data, and we have found no evidence of a white genocide in South Africa. Between April and December 2024, there were about just over 30 murders at farms in South Africa. Only 7 of them were of farmers. South Africa does not release crime statistics by race, but the farmers tend to be white. The workers at these farms tend to be black. So even South Africa's own data does not show any evidence of any white genocide that President Ramaphosa has tried to explain to President Trump. What President Trump has said increasingly is that their land is being seized from them and they're getting executed. And he showed that video of this 1,000 crosses. I've been covering South Africa for 15 years. I've lived and worked in South Africa. I know many South African friends. I spoke to President Ramaphosa last week, and he told me something that he repeated at that Oval Office meeting to President Trump, that we were taught at the feet of Nelson Mandela. If there's an issue, we talk about it and we agree. President Ramaphosa also told me last week that he'd explained this to President Trump, that when they have an issue, they discuss it. And that's why there's no evidence of this genocide that he's talking about. And South Africa, he said, is the only country in Africa where the colonizers came to stay and they've never driven them out. So all of these videos, that the presentation that he made, the multimedia ambush that they've just presented with these videos and the printouts, and you can see the agriculture minister from South Africa, from the DA, that is the white majority party that has traditionally opposed the African National Congress party of President Ramaphosa. They're in a coalition government, and the agriculture minister is sitting there explaining that this is not true. What the videos show is Julius Malema, the far left opposition leader of South Africa. His party is called the Economic Freedom Fighters, and it also showed former President Jacob Zuma. What Julius Malema was singing, "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer," was an anti-apartheid song from the struggle against white minority rule in South Africa. They've explained that this is not a literal attack, call to attack and kill the farmer because of the historical nature of that, but it's been weaponized by groups in South Africa and increasingly by the MAGA right in the United States to essentially misrepresent what is going on in the country, Brianna.
Also of note, Larry, can you speak? We heard there, and he was just sort of in the forefront of the camera shot, the agriculture minister, because it seemed that President Ramaphosa was kind of trying to show up with some backup, which is one of his ministers who is white, who is not from the same party as him, John Steenhuisen. Talk a little bit about that, as he was saying that black farmers have been affected by violence as well, and that this is really part of a larger issue of violence. Murder rate, by the way, in South Africa multitudes the factor of what it is in the U.S., just as a reference point. Talk a little bit about that agriculture minister and what we heard.
Right, that agriculture minister, John Steenhuisen, who is from the Democratic Alliance, the opposition party that's in coalition with the President Ramaphosa's ANC party, he explicitly said that the reason why he joined President Ramaphosa's government is to make sure that these extremist elements within the South African political scene don't get into power. He's referring to Julius Malema and former President Jacob Zuma. But he's in this position is interesting because he has repeatedly supported President Ramaphosa's argument that there is no white genocide. Otherwise, he would not be in a government that was carrying out these seizing land from white farmers and executing them, as President Trump believes. And the fact that he's the agriculture minister is especially important because the majority of farmers in South Africa are white. They own the majority of the land. This is why it's a major political issue, because the black majority do not own a lot of the land in South Africa. And he, as a white Afrikaner, is the agriculture minister of South Africa and is telling President Trump and the press there that he has not seen any evidence of a white genocide in the country. And President Trump insists that it's not being reported. In my experience reporting in South Africa, I don't think it's possible that 1,000 farmers could have been killed and buried along the roadside, and there's thousands of cars paying respects without anybody noticing it. But that's what President Trump believes. I've been speaking to some South Africans watching this live, and they say this is AfriForum propaganda. AfriForum is considered a white nationalist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and everything that President Trump has been saying in the White House is word for word their talking points. So they've succeeded in presenting their grievances to the highest office in the land, and President Trump has put that before the President of South Africa.
And if you do look at some of the numbers that AfriForum itself has put out there, which is focusing on the deaths of white farmers, they're estimating it to be about 50 a year.